So what exactly is sponsorship? Well, it helps if you think of sponsorship as a form of ownership. You see, when you sponsor an event or a building or whatever, you sort of take ownership of a portion of that, whether it be an event or whatever, and you are able to exclude others from being in it. So a good example is with the Olympics. Companies like McDonald's have paid millions of dollars to be sponsors of the Olympics. That means their competitors can't be in it. They actually own a portion of that. Take, for example, this NASCAR. One quick look and you know who the main sponsor is. And how about this, the Staples Center? Pretty obvious who the main sponsor of that is. Now, the advantage to sponsorship, well, it's kind of twofold. First off, being able to exclude your competitors, well, that's pretty cool. For example, you'll never see Burger King as an Olympic partner, but as well, it gives you control. You see, when you sponsor an event or a building or whatever, you can often have more control over how it's presented. So for example, you might have naming rights over the event, naming rights over a certain product, or like example with the NASCAR, you're all over the place. So it gives you that control that you wouldn't get with just regular advertising. So this brings us to advertising, which is basically you paying for your message to be broadcast using a specific form of media. Now that media can include anything from print, web, email, direct mail, web banners, anything, even really ugly lawn signs. But the fact is, the way advertising works is you pay for the ability to broadcast using that medium. Think it almost like, rather than ownership through sponsorship, think of it as renting space. So you're renting that 30-second spot on the radio or television, or you're renting the ability to have a little spot on somebody's webpage. And sometimes it's even free. Like with these lawn signs, I'm pretty sure the people who have these signs here didn't pay a penny, but they risk having the town come by and pull out these signs at any time. So it could be one of those cases of you get what you pay for. So when it comes to sponsorship or advertising, the big question is what's right for you and your business? Well, think of 3 key points when deciding between advertising or sponsoring. First, what's your goal? What do you want to say? How do you want to say it? Are you trying to increase business? Are you trying to increase awareness? Do you have a sale going on, like a seasonal sale, something like that? Or are you just trying to sort of get yourself into the community? That is key between advertising and sponsorship. Sponsorship could give you a little more power to get in, especially if you sponsor something, let's say a kid's baseball team or a local church newsletter, something like that, rather than just advertising in one. Second thing to ask yourself is budget. How much do you want to spend? Now, you might be thinking that sponsorship is generally more expensive than advertising, but that's not always the case. It depends on the media. So back to a kid's baseball team. You could sponsor a kid's baseball team just by buying 10 or 20 t-shirts. Might cost you a couple $100. But to place a small ad in a local newspaper, well, that might cost you double that. So it really depends how much you're willing to spend on getting your message out. And finally, number 3 to think about in deciding between sponsorship and advertising is compatibility. So for example, if you're selling, well, let's say adult sex toys, you may not want to place an ad in the local church newspaper, or maybe depending on the kind of church, but you know what I mean. You really need to think about the kind of event or the kind of media that you're using and whether it reaches not only your target market, but whether it's in sync with your kind of business and your kind of message. Now, staying with the episode's theme of sponsorship versus advertising, Mr. Jack Pignatello from AmRamp sent me a kazoo, and I'll tell you the story behind this. He saw an episode we had done a while ago called The Art of Swag, in which I talked about promotional items. And he decided to send me a couple kazoos that he had used as promotional items. Now, the question is, would this be advertising or sponsorship? Well, if you said advertising, you'd be correct. This is the medium. And at a recent trade show, and trade shows, advertising or sponsorship? Well, if you said either or, you'd be correct, because having a trade show booth is advertising, but you could potentially be a sponsor of the entire show. Well, at his trade show booth, he was giving out kazoos to everybody who came by. And if you've ever tried to play a kazoo, you'll know it's nearly impossible. And he was filming these people trying to learn to play the kazoo and posted it up on the company's YouTube page. And guess what? He's gotten tons of views and everyone's had a good time looking at themselves trying to play the kazoo and sharing it with their friends. And it was a great PR move by AmRamp.